You ever had one of those moments where you just stop, rub your eyes, and ask, what the hell is going on? Yeah, that was every single person watching the WNBA game in LA when it happened. Middle of the game, free throw, cameras rolling, players focused, tension thick, and then, boom, right onto the court. A dildo, a bright green, neon-lit, probably from a joke store adult toy, bouncing right onto hardwood. And who does it hit? Sophie Cunningham, of all people. If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. The same Sophie Cunningham who literally just warned the league, the fans, and everyone with ears that this was getting out of control, that this trend of throwing toys and inappropriate objects onto the court wasn't funny anymore. It was dangerous. And what happens the very next game? She's the one who gets hit. Mid-game, in uniform, surrounded by cameras, thousands of fans watching. It's not even ironic at this point. It's just disgusting. Now, let's back up for a second. This isn't the first time fans have tried to pull something like this. The bring toys to the game thing started as a weird niche internet joke, a way for some fans to push buttons, get a laugh, maybe catch some viral attention. But somewhere along the way, it crossed a line from quirky to completely inappropriate. And the league? They've been slow to act. Until now. Because when a projectile dildo flies out of the stands and hits a player during live gameplay, that's no longer a social media moment. That's a security threat. That's an assault with props. Let's just be real. If this had happened in the NBA, that arena would have been shut down. The fan would have been dragged out instantly. ESPN would be running wall-to-wall coverage about player safety and fan behavior. But because it's a WNBA, the response felt casual, delayed, almost like everyone in the building was trying to process what they just saw without saying it out loud. But you have to say it out loud, because this is what it looks like when a sport gets disrespected at the cultural level. Let's talk about Sophie Cunningham for a second. She's not just any player. She's a vocal presence, a three-point threat, and whether you like her or not, one of the few players who doesn't hold back when it comes to calling out nonsense. She warned about this, literally warned. She said players were tired of having to look over their shoulders. She said someone was going to get hit. She said this isn't what the WNBA stands for. And then it happens to her. Her reaction said it all. Not shock, just sheer disgust. Because you could tell in that moment, she wasn't just reacting to the toy. She was reacting to the realization that no one had taken her seriously, that everything she feared would happen did. And standing right next to her, Kelsey Plum, the poor woman tasked with picking the thing up off the court and casually removing it like she's sweeping up popcorn. No one trained for this. No one expected that to be part of their game day responsibilities. And yet, here we are. The incident was so absurd, so inappropriate, it almost overshadowed the actual game. A game with playoff implications. A game that mattered. A game these players worked all week, all year to prepare for. But instead, the headlines weren't about the defense or the stats or the clutch shots. They were about a neon green sex toy flying through the air like some cursed Mario Kart item. And that's the part that's enraging. Because the WNBA has been fighting for respect, for better pay, for national media coverage, for real security. And just when the spotlight is finally turning toward them, some troll in the 200s decides to treat the game like a joke. And here's what makes it worse. This isn't just a one-time thing anymore. There's a pattern forming. People saw it get attention online. They saw the clips go viral. They saw no one get arrested or banned. So now it's a game to some people. A challenge. What's the next thing someone can throw? And that's how you know the league has to shut this down now, or lose all control. To the WNBA's credit, they finally came out with a statement condemning the behavior, saying fans will face serious consequences if caught throwing objects. But let's be honest, why did it take this long? Sophie said it a week ago. The players have been whispering about it for months. You got fans sneaking in full-size vibrators, adult items, and tossing them during play. And only now there's a policy? This isn't the time for polite warnings. This is the time for permanent bans, arrests, security sweeps. Zero tolerance. Because if this were a different league, if someone had thrown anything remotely sexual at a male athlete mid-play, we wouldn't even be debating this. It would have been front-page news. That person would be booked in a holding cell before the final buzzer. So why is this being treated like some weird me moment? Because it's the WNBA. Because for some people, women's sports are still seen as a punchline, not a profession. And that's the problem. Let's be very clear. This isn't about being uptight. It's not about being soft. This isn't about banning jokes or passion from sports. It's about respect. Respect for the athletes. Respect for the game. Respect for the fact that these women are professionals, not props for a viral moment. When fans cross the line from cheering to interfering, they stop being supporters. They become liabilities. And if players don't feel safe on the court, then what are we even doing here? Imagine being Sophie Cunningham right now. You show up, lace up, lock in. You've worked your whole life for this career. And then mid-game, some random dude in the stands decides to launch a phallic object at your head like it's part of the halftime show. It's not funny. It's not edgy. It's harassment. And yes, there are legal consequences now. The guy responsible, Delbert Carver, because of course that's his name, was arrested. He thought he was clever. He thought it would be a moment. Instead, it's going on his permanent record. Let that be a warning. The league is watching now. The teams are watching. The cameras are always rolling. Throw something stupid, you're not going viral. You're going to court, and rightfully so, because when you attack the integrity of the game, you don't just disrespect one player. You disrespect every player, every coach, every fan who came to watch actual basketball, not a live-action circus. In the end, this moment is going to be remembered, not just for the shock, but for the reaction, because Sophie Cunningham stood tall. She shook it off. She didn't melt down or storm off. She didn't let it rattle her. She just wiped her hands, locked back in, and kept playing. That's what pros do. But let's not forget what this incident really exposed. The WNBA isn't just battling for ratings or airtime. It's battling for basic respect. From media, from fans, from security, from the public. And until every arena, every league exec, every broadcaster starts treating this sport with the seriousness it deserves, things like this will keep happening, unless we draw the line. Right now. Because if you're still showing up to a professional sports game with a sex toy in your pocket, you don't deserve courtside. You deserve suspension. And probably some therapy. Let's keep the game about the game. And let Sophie Cunningham and every player just play basketball in peace. What's wild about this entire situation is that it didn't come out of nowhere. This wasn't some isolated prank by a rogue fan. No. This was a slow-moving train wreck that had been gaining speed for weeks. There had been warning signs. There had been moments, jokes, videos, and even prior games where things were getting out of hand. But now it's no longer something you can laugh off or brush aside with a nervous smile. Because now a player got hit. And the question echoing across the basketball world is, what happens next? Because how the WNBA chooses to respond to this moment won't just define the rest of the season. It might define the league's reputation for years. Let's start with what this says about the current fan climate. For months, fans have been celebrating the surge of attention around the WNBA. Rising ticket sales, sold-out arenas, skyrocketing jersey numbers, television ratings up, the app buzzing. All the signs of growth that a league dreams of. And the center of it all? The players who brought charisma, skill, and yes, controversy. But growth, real growth, comes with responsibility. And somewhere along the line, a section of fans, fueled by online clout culture and the pursuit of viral moments, forgot what this is really about. They stopped viewing the players as athletes and started treating them like props in their own social media play. That's not fandom. That's exploitation. This moment with Sophie Cunningham is proof that a boundary needs to be redrawn, not just by the league, but by the fans themselves. The truth is, basketball culture has always had a rowdy edge. From hecklers in the stands to signs that toe the line, energy has always been part of the game. But when did that energy become entitlement? When did being a fan turn into believing you're part of the show? Because newsflash, you're not. You're not a cast member. You're not the main character. You're not a part of the entertainment. You're a guest in that arena. And if you can't act with basic decency toward the people who trained their entire lives to be there, then maybe you shouldn't be allowed to the doors at all. There's something deeply unsettling about what happened to Sophie. Not just the object itself, but the reaction to it. Some people laughed. Some people recorded it. Some people turned it into a meme before the game even ended. And that says everything about how normalized this kind of behavior has become. We've reached a point where grown adults are bringing shock value objects to games for attention, with zero regard for who might be impacted. And what gets lost in all this chaos is the humanity of the players. Sophie Cunningham is a professional athlete. She is also a daughter, a friend, a teammate, and a human being who did not sign up to be humiliated mid-game for someone else's internet joke. Let's shift focus for a second and talk about leadership. Because while fans might have lit the match, it's the league's job to put out the fire. And if they don't act quickly and decisively, then they're sending a very clear message that their players are expendable, that their safety is negotiable, that their dignity can be placed second to fan engagement. This isn't about banning fun. This isn't about restricting enthusiasm. This is about drawing a clear, unwavering line between passion and disrespect. What the league needs right now is leadership with teeth, not vague statements, not hollow promises. Real action, increased security presence, mandatory bag checks, lifetime bans for fans who throw anything onto the court, and yes, legal follow-through. Because what happened to Sophie Cunningham isn't just a bad look. It's a safety issue, and if the league doesn't act, they're not just risking their image. They're risking a player getting seriously injured next time, because the next object might not be made of rubber. It might not be part of a joke. It might be something heavy, sharp, or actually dangerous. And by then, it'll be too late. But maybe the most tragic part of all of this is how preventable it was. Sophie herself warned the league. She brought it up publicly. She knew where the culture was heading. She saw the signs. And she wasn't the only one. Other players, too, have started expressing frustration, not just with the objects being thrown, but with the feeling that their workplace isn't being treated like one. Because that's what this is, a workplace. When fans disrupt a basketball game, they're not just making a scene. They're walking into someone's job and throwing something at them mid-shift. Can you imagine that happening in any other setting? If someone walked into a boardroom and threw something at a presenter? If a customer tossed something at a cashier during a shift? We wouldn't even hesitate to call it inappropriate. There'd be disciplinary action, maybe even legal consequences. So why is the standard lower for athletes? Why do people feel like it's okay to treat these women like they're less than professionals? It's time for that mindset to end. Today, let's also not ignore the mental impact of moments like this. People love to talk about physical safety, and they should, but emotional safety matters just as much. Getting hit with an object on live television in the middle of a high-stakes game is humiliating. It rattles your focus. It makes you feel unsafe in a place that's supposed to be your zone of strength. No player should have to look up into the stands and wonder, am I going to get hit today? No player should question whether the league actually has their back. Moments like this can damage a player's trust in the system. They can change the way someone plays the game. They can chip away at confidence. And while the internet might move on in 24 hours, the players involved are left carrying the emotional residue long after. As for the fans, the real fans, the ones who show up with signs, support, and actual respect, they're feeling the sting too, because they know this isn't what the WNBA is about. They know the league has worked hard to build something meaningful. And when a moment like this becomes a headline, it overshadows everything the league has achieved. The talent, the growth, the incredible stories, all swept away because one person decided to make a spectacle out of someone else's job. And the league can't afford that anymore. The WNBA is on the rise. Eyes are finally on them. Momentum is building. The players are giving everything they've got. Skill, heart, sacrifice. This is not the time for careless mistakes. This is not the time for tolerance toward bad behavior. It's time to protect what's being built. So here's the takeaway, plain and simple. This moment, as absurd as it was, should be a line in the sand. It should be the last time we see something like this happen in a WNBA game. Because if it isn't, if the league continues to let this behavior slide, then the message is loud and clear. Spectacle matters more than safety. And if that happens, the league won't just lose credibility. It'll lose trust. From players, from fans, from families who bring their kids to games hoping to see greatness, not nonsense, and from the athletes who put their bodies, reputations, and energy on the line every single night to move the game forward. They deserve better. Sophie Cunningham deserves better. Every woman in this league deserves better. And it's time the WNBA proves it. What makes this moment so frustrating, what makes it truly maddening, is how preventable it was. We're not talking about some unforeseeable act of chaos that blindsided the league. We're talking about a pattern, a slow boil, a wave of bizarre and inappropriate fan behavior that has been growing louder, more frequent, and more brazen in recent months. And Sophie Cunningham saw it coming. She saw it before anyone else. She didn't need a security memo or an incident report to know that something was brewing. She felt it. You could hear it in her voice when she spoke out during that press conference. You could see it in her body language during interviews. She wasn't just frustrated. She was concerned. She knew this wasn't just a joke anymore. It was a matter of time before it crossed the line. And then it did. So now, what does Sophie do? Does she just shake it off and keep moving? Does she stay quiet and pretend it never happened? Of course not. Because Sophie Cunningham isn't the type to stay silent when things get uncomfortable. She's the kind of player who steps forward, takes the heat, and speaks for those who can't. And in the wake of this deeply disrespectful act, she's become the symbol of something much bigger. The fight for a basic dignity in professional women's sports. But this is more than just one player and one object. This is about how seriously we take women's sports as a whole. Because let's be honest, if a similar incident had happened in the NFL, if a quarterback got hit by anything during a nationally televised game, the league would have released a 24-hour investigation statement. Security footage would have been analyzed, and the fan responsible would be banned across all stadiums indefinitely. The NFL wouldn't wait for the next morning to take action. There would be immediate consequences, because they understand the value of control, authority, and reputation. So, why does the WNBA respond with so much hesitation? Why does it take multiple incidents for leadership to even acknowledge there's a problem? The answer? It's not that they don't care. It's that the WNBA is still learning how to act like a major league. It's growing fast, but growth doesn't always come with wisdom. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes moments like this to force hard decisions. But the players don't have time to wait for the league to figure it out. They need protection now. What happened to Sophie also raises the issue of workplace safety, not just in the physical sense, but emotionally, psychologically, and culturally. When athletes take the court, they're not just there to entertain. They're there to work. They're professionals. They represent their teams, their cities, and sometimes their entire sport. And like any other professionals, they deserve to feel safe and respected in their place of work. Imagine being at your job, whether it's teaching, serving, building, designing, and someone throws something at you, not by accident, on purpose, something inappropriate, meant to humiliate. Now imagine your boss doesn't say anything until 3 days later. That's what Sophie Cunningham is dealing with. That's what her teammates are watching. And that's what the fans are now forced to reckon with. But it's not just about what happens in the arena. This incident has a ripple effect. It shifts how the media covers a league. It alters how parents perceive games as family-friendly events. It even changes how younger players, girls who look up to Sophie and others, imagine themselves in this space. Because what message are we sending to them? That if you get good enough, you might get hit with a toy in front of a sold-out crowd? That being visible means being vulnerable in ways no one warned you about? That's not how you grow a sport. That's not how you attract the next generation of stars. That's not how you treat the very people whose talent you rely on to keep the machine running. And speaking of talent, let's not lose sight of the fact that Sophie is having a season. She's been one of the most consistent shooters in the league. Her leadership on and off the court has turned her into a cornerstone presence. And just when she's finally getting the recognition she deserves, this happens. This moment could have been a celebration of her rise. Instead, it became a reminder of how far we still have to go. It's unfair, it's infuriating, and it's exactly why players like Sophie matter, because she's not backing down. Let's shift to the locker room. What's the vibe in there after a moment like this? Quiet, tense, frustrated, because it's not just Sophie who feels it. It's every woman who shares that court with her, every teammate who now wonders if they're next, every player who thinks, if it can happen to her, it can happen to any of us. And in a league as small and tightly knit as the WNBA, word spreads fast. You better believe players across the country were texting each other that night, asking what really happened, asking what the league said, asking what they're supposed to do if it happens to them. It's a shift in trust. It's a crack in the foundation. And it's on the league to patch that crack before it becomes a full-blown fracture. But here's what gives us hope. The players have had enough. They're not waiting around for statements. They're not holding back their feelings. They're speaking out clearly, loudly, and without fear. And fans, real fans, they're backing them. They're calling for more protection, more accountability, more respect. Because deep down, everyone who loves the sport knows one thing. This isn't who the WNBA is. This isn't what it stands for. And this is not the future anyone signed up for. The WNBA is supposed to be a league of firsts, a league of progress, a league where the best athletes in the world can show up and do what they do best without being reduced to a punchline. And if leadership is paying attention, they'll realize that this isn't a PR challenge. It's a cultural reset opportunity. It's a chance to step up and say, we protect our players. Period. No exceptions. No second chances for those who cross the line. And finally, we turn back to Sophie. She didn't ask for this moment. She didn't invite it. But she's owning it. She could have chosen to stay quiet, to focus on basketball, to let someone else take the lead. But she didn't. She stood tall. She spoke with clarity and conviction. And in doing so, she reminded us all of something very simple, but very powerful. That athletes are people. That sports are about more than scores. That respect is not optional. And that if we truly want to see the WNBA grow into everything it can be, then moments like this have to be the last of their kind. Not the beginning of a trend, but the end of one. The line has been crossed. Now it's time to draw a new one. Together,